Hi, ByBiGirls. Welcome back this week. I'm here with my friend and co-host Katana, and right now I am still in Portland, Oregon, but I'm going to be back for next week's. And this week we are going to talk about casual sex and all that good stuff. I'm pretty excited about this topic, right, Kit?
Yeah, I'm really excited too. Obviously, this is something I feel very passionately about.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty critical part of life.
Right. So, why don't we first of all define sex, since we're bisexual and whatever, it varies from person to person. How would you define it? I know I have my definitions set out, but
Yeah, I have it different for like a guy and a girl personally. I do believe that like with a guy, I do believe that there should be a penis involved, just like because that's kind of breaking that barrier, especially if you're a virgin. So I definitely count penis and vagina as sex between a man and woman, and then between two men, I believe penetration of the butt probably my category. I'd say that's sex. And then two women, I'd say kind of just all that stuff, hands and mouths on like everything. Also, I feel like for like a woman, like if I had sex with a woman, I'd also say that since there is no like penetration of like any external parts, I'd say that definitely like love and passion. I want that to be like in my category for it to really be like sex, you
you want
know?
to be emotionally penetrated.
I mean, I'd say it's a good bonus. I mean, I would say if it's like good sex, it should be, but if we're just talking sex, then yeah, just mouth and hands up in all those good parts.
Yeah, for me, as for women, I would argue that like sex would be if they experienced an orgasm, whereas men it would be more penetration. I do believe like one person can consider something sex while another person may not consider it to be
Yeah.
sex. And a lot of gay men don't necessarily have, anal intercourse, so they may choose to define it differently than the penetration definition simply because having anal sex comes with its own garbage bag of risks, especially if you don't know the person very well or don't trust them that much. You and I have both participated in hookup culture, as some people say, apps like Grindr, Tinder, Her, Bumble. You were on Her for a long time. What was your experience on that?
Well, on Tinder, I was there for guys before, and it was always just fuckboy after fuckboy. And then I only met up with one guy. I had the courage to meet up with one guy, and nothing really happened. We kind of just met up and then started making out, and he like groped my tits and my ass.
Oof.
His mouth was really cold. That's the one thing I'm gonna always remember. His mouth was super cold, and I was really like weirded out by it. And that was like it. Never talked to him again. So I hated that. And then I was on Her for a bit, and I went on one date with this girl who lived like in Van Nuys, and I drove like an hour, hour and a half to her.
Oh man.
It was a nice date, and I know that she wanted to like kiss me at the end of the night, but we didn't like hook up or anything. Just because at that point, hooking up wasn't quite my style. I'd say that now though, even though I'm in like a relationship, I would definitely be the type to, I'd say to like hook up, just whenever I felt like it.
Yeah, to some extent, I don't like the apps for hooking up because all I really see is, especially when you're looking at women, is Snapchat filter, really close selfie, and I just don't find any of them attractive. From those vantage points, I don't find them attractive.
Yeah, because it like, you can tell who was like trying too hard. Like that's one thing
Right.
I didn't like about Her is that like it's literally like, you know, a vagina fest. It's just like, who looks the best and like everyone's trying too hard, and I personally didn't like that.
Right. So I did have like a like
I felt like there was
probably
no
what?
I felt like there are no genuine girls on Her.
Mm. Yeah, so as you know, I had probably a 2 or 3 month tryst with a girl from Her about 2 years ago. Um, and it was basically, a friends with benefits kind of situation. We just kind of hooked up the whole summer and then stopped. She actually texted me yesterday, which was really crazy, after 2 years of radio silence. So that was really weird. But yeah, I did have like a casual encounter thing going on. And I have had casual encounters with men and whatever, and those aren't really that big a deal. I didn't meet them through apps, usually through school or mutual friends or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, how did those turn out? Like, would you say it was like a good experience or maybe a bad experience? Do you think that maybe did her profile like kind of clearly depict who she was as a person?
I would say her profile did not truly depict who she was as a person, but I would also say that I was not let down when I met her. I definitely got more than I expected. Like, I had very low expectations, and then I met her, and she's just really funny. She's pretty cute, She was very, very dykey, very, flannels, macho, whatever. And she was just very sexy in her own regard, and it was great. I feel like I got what I wanted out of it. And then when it was over, and it was very clean. I don't feel like there was animosity, and the fact that she texted me yesterday and we had a really friendly conversation tells me there was no animosity.
Mm-hmm.
As for my experience with guys, it was a lot more. Let's see, I probably had 2 or 3 guys that I hooked up with like that, and I had one that I just straight up ghosted afterwards because he had a micro penis and I had no idea how to handle that or what to do with it.
Mm.
And so my reaction of choice was zero, gone. Like,
Oh my gosh.
the other one kind of caught feelings and it turned into like this messy thing that I didn't want it to be. That tended to be my experience more than anything else. Guys catch feelings way faster than girls. I don't care who you are or what you think. Girls have such a good emotional barrier set up from dealing with men that men are the ones who are really vulnerable to that, I find.
Hmm. So when you casually hook up with people or casually have sex, do you do it for the thrill, for the pleasure, or for the contact or the connection?
At the time I was doing it, okay, so when I was doing it in high school, I was doing it partially because I was bored and partially because I just felt like I kind of should be. I didn't really get much out of it from them. Men don't really understand how to please women for a long time until a woman sits them down and goes, "This is how, you fool." As for the friends with benefits situation with the girl, I did find that I was doing that mainly because I wanted more experience having sex with women and doing that kind of a thing. Because I'd had one before her and it was not very good, and that was a one night stand kind of a deal. Even though it wasn't supposed to be, that's how it ended up being, and it just wasn't. It wasn't good. I felt like I didn't learn anything from it. She didn't do anything or know anything, but this girl was a lot more experienced, and she took me under her wing, if you will, opened me up, and yeah, it was good.
Awesome.
Yeah. What about you? I know you haven't really had any like hookups, but what have you had that you feel like might be in the realm?
Well, the thing is that I know that as of now, if I were single, I definitely would be hooking up, casual sex and all that stuff. And so I can easily tell you why I'd want to. Because as you know, like, I am sexually active, so I don't really think it's for like, just like to do it. I kind of want to like have casual sex if I were single, so I can um I see people who look mighty fine and I appreciate their style, their look, their body, and I just want to be a part of that. So it's kind of me, being quite fond of a person's looks.
You want to have the
And
option.
huh?
You want to have the option to do something with someone if you want to.
Yeah, I just like if I appreciate their looks, I really want to like go for it and I really want to like, do stuff with them. So I guess mine kind of comes more from maybe like a man's standpoint because I feel like a lot of men just kind of like see a good piece of ass and they're like, yeah, Like, I want to fuck it. And I feel like that's kind of like me too. Like, if I see someone who looks really nice, I'd kind of want to, I kind of want to, see what would happen. I feel like the only reason why I might be like held back from doing it is just my personal self-conscious issues,
Right.
which kind of sucks. But I feel like if I were like maybe drunk enough, like a shot or two, it'd probably be a lot easier. Um,
Do you really think you're so self conscious that you'd be unable to go through with something like that?
I would say yes, because
Hmm.
even when I go to like parties and I flirt with men who have a very nice body, that's what I'm attracted to the most. But I never see myself ending up with them or ever being able to hook up with them because I feel like my body type just doesn't like go well with them and they wouldn't be attracted to it. So once they like see it like all naked, I feel like it'd just be like such a turn off for them. And then as soon as they'd see me, like I would feel very self conscious and I feel like it wouldn't work out that well. Um, but I think I was telling you about a guy a few weeks ago that like, was like tempted to do stuff with. This is just like our conversation at school.
Right.
And I like kind of like was tempted because he was really nice and kind and he had like a good body, but he wasn't like six pack, you know what I mean? So I was like, I felt like if I did with anyone, it
Mm-hmm.
would have been like a guy like him who was like really nice and like didn't have a perfect body, but still had like a nice one.
Yeah, for me, I'm not really into all the muscles and all the nonsense. For me, what I'm really attracted to is, good sense of style. I really like hair a lot. I couldn't date
Yeah.
someone who's balding or seems like they may be in the future. That's kind of big to me. But yeah, it's really just stylistic for me. Girls I'm a lot pickier with. I'm so picky with girls. I'm very, very just particular about what I want there. I like a curvier girl. I won't date someone skinny. I'm the worst at profiling. Just go ahead and hate me in the comments, everybody. But I like what I like. Um,
No, like no shame in that, like it all starts from, visual
It
attraction. So
does. It does. And, what we're just talking about casual sex here, which is 100% visual attraction. You may know a couple things
it's
about the person, but you're probably not going to know them that well.
just enough to know that you can at least trust them enough to let them get down to the nitty gritty and but in the sheets.
Right, so trust. Obviously, there's a lot of risks with doing something like having casual sex. Do you think you can do it safely?
Um, I'd say it's definitely possible, and I feel like if you're smart about it, I'd say you absolutely can be totally safe having sex. It's all about knowing who you're doing it with and communicating with them, and you need to be on the same ground and know that this is all casual. And with that said, you don't want any accidents to happen. You don't want any infections running around. You don't want any emotional attachment. And it can absolutely be done safe as long as you and your partner is on the same exact page while doing it.
Right. So I know we both were supposed to come up with 6 rules that we would have, 6 guidelines for if you were going to have casual sex with someone. What would be the checklist to do it safely for both your physical and emotional well being? What did you come up with for that?
Well, I made sure that you're not emotionally connected because I'd say that's the number one rule that defeats the purpose of casual sex.
Mm-hmm.
I would say make sure that you and them are on the exact same page in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that you need to be safe with everything you're doing. You need to be safe with protection and you need to be safe with infections. I'd also say communication. You need to be able to communicate to each other whether or not you are liking it, whether or not you're having other thoughts, whether or not you're getting regret. That's definitely huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you don't overthink it either. And that's kind of in the same thing as like don't attach yourself.
Right.
You don't want to overthink it. You can't, think something's happening even though it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd say the last thing that I actually read about and I really like this is I wouldn't necessarily put them too far in my personal life at all.
Really? So even if it
Yeah,
was a friends with benefits situation?
It really, well, at this point, so the whole putting them in my personal life, that is only a halfsies. Because if it's someone that I met
Yeah, what
and
if they're
was,
already in your personal life?
so yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So that's like a half rule. So if, I met them at a party and then we decided to do it, I'm not gonna put them in my personal life.
Hmm.
But if, for example, you and I were casually having sex and you're already in my personal life, then that would go into the terms of my other half sex is I wouldn't make it more than just in the bed. So I wouldn't be like holding your hand or kissing you in public per se. I mean, maybe some like looky loos, but I wouldn't go too far and make it, appear as though we're like a couple in public because I feel like once again that kind of defeats the purpose of the casual sex.
Okay.
Because I feel like there shouldn't be any of that stuff going on. Um,
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I see
but
that.
that's more of like a personal protection of my like emotions. I feel like if it goes,
So you wouldn't say
more than
that's
out
for
of the bedroom.
everyone, that's just for you mainly. Like that would be
Yeah.
your rule. Okay, I like
Yeah.
that. Okay, so I also came up with 6 rules. So let me give them to you and then we can like compare and contrast. So my number one rule would be give a name to what's happening. Is this a one night stand or are you friends with benefits, fuck buddies? So name it and then don't make it into something that it isn't. My number 2 rule would be always, always, always use protection. Very simple rule. 3, have a discussion about sexual history, including STD, STI testing. My personal rule is if they haven't been tested in the last 6 months, I won't do anything with them until they get tested, because I just don't know. If they haven't been tested recently, I don't know what's going on there. My 4th rule, don't mislead them as to what's happening and what your expectations are. So don't present yourself like I'm looking for someone to have a relationship with so that they'll do something with you. It's manipulation and it's dishonest. Number 5, use the casual opportunity hookup scenario to practice asking for exactly what you want in a low risk environment. If they say no and they think you're weird, what the fuck do you care? You're gone in the morning. Uh, 6, acknowledge that you're entering into some kind of relationship and that all relationships come with obligations, even if it isn't a formal relationship and there's a lot less obligations. So
Solid.
those are my rules.
That's super solid. I like that.
Now, those are my personal rules that I've kind of gone through when I'm doing something with anybody. Like I always have a discussion. I always take the opportunity to tell them what I want. Like with that girl I was hooking up with a couple years ago, that was probably the first time in my life I looked at somebody and I was like, this is what's gonna do it for me. Help. Like that hadn't happened before because high school. But yeah, I think it's a great. I think it is a growing opportunity for people to at least learn themselves better.
hmm So if we were talking to Ryan, for example, so just any casual man or Michael, do you think that men would be interpreting casual sex maybe differently than women would?
Well, Ryan is adamantly against it, which is interesting to me. He really doesn't like it. He's demisexual, which I've talked about before, even though he probably wouldn't even... He knows what it means, and I've explained it to him before, and we've talked about it, and he does identify with that term. But if you asked him what his sexuality is, that's not what he'd say. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that wouldn't come to his mind. It wouldn't pop up first. But he is
Yeah.
demisexual, so he really can only have successful sexual encounters with people he has an emotional connection to. So casual sex really doesn't work for him, and I've seen it happen. It really does physically doesn't happen,
Mm,
which is really sweet. I think it's really sweet and special, but it's just not something he can participate in or really experience.
yeah, absolutely. I understand. The reason why I ask is just because doing research, I was just Google searching, stuff about casual sex, and then I saw, an article that said 6 unspoken rules of
Mm-hmm.
casual sex. And then I noticed this was on a GQ website. And if you guys don't know, GQ is a men's magazine. So I had like the holy Bible of what men look out for when having casual sex. And the first one was check your emotions at the door. 2, be yourself, only different. And I think by different, they were meaning,
More
um,
masculine.
yeah, more masculine, be the man you should be in bed. 3, to be a gentleman and an animal, which I thought was very interesting. And that's a very stereotypical man thing to say.
Everything you want,
Um,
though.
yeah. 4,
Don't be
control
too
your port.
nice once we're in the bed.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Be a gentleman all the way up to the mattress. Never, keep going.
4 being control your portions, meaning don't do it too much. Don't make sure you're not overdoing it, I guess. 5, pop the questions, and then 6 being stare death in the face, meaning that this casual sex is unsustainable. So seeing that, I then, thought to myself, well, what would a women's article say? Because obviously women tend to overthink. And funny enough, with that said, I couldn't even find any any less than like 8 or 10 unspoken rules. Like you can't just have 5 or 6 if you're talking to women. You gotta have like 10.
Yeah, but like most of it, I'd say is centered around emotion.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because if you see, like, even the first one was think to yourself, are you emotionally ready? That was the very first one.
Which isn't even a question for men. It's just like they're going to do it. It's taken as granted.
It's all just, are you ready, bro? Like, ready to get some ass? Like, yes. Like, that's not even a question.
Yeah, if you didn't
Um,
do it, that would be weird.
yeah, absolutely. Um, Number 2 being don't cuddle. And when I was reading it, it was just saying, like, you're going to be tempted to, but don't. And
Why
I
not? That's part of the experience.
honestly,
It's part of it.
I know,
I would.
I
I don't care.
respectfully disagree with the don't cuddle.
I do too,
Um,
because
Three,
you're not going in to like experience someone's, genitals and then peace out bye. You're going in to have a really brief encounter with this person, this human being. This is a human being, even if you're not going to get to know them that well and it's not going to be anything, it's not going to amount to a relationship. There's still a person that you've entered into this. Again, there's a sort of obligation here, a sort of short term relationship. You should be okay with expressing yourselves physically, being kind of close in that manner that feels appropriate to me.
yeah, absolutely. What's next? This one is don't allow him to manipulate, which I thought was very interesting that a woman would even think of that, as if, I don't know, I feel like that's very like sheltering and a little naive of them to think that like all men manipulate. I mean, I didn't really like that one. Um, because I mean, how can you really manipulate? It's just casual sex.
Yeah, I'd say some men will try to manipulate women into having sex with them, but honestly, that's just a like. I don't feel like that's a rule for having casual sex. That's a rule
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was meaning. It
to like
shouldn't
field
you.
your suitors. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
eh, I don't.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't like that rule.
Yeah, I didn't like that one. Um, the next one being don't make him a priority.
Okay, I have a big problem with this one.
You do.
Because, yes, I do. I have a huge problem with this one. Because it's a personal belief of mine that like, good sex is when both people prioritize the other person.
Well, I was thinking more like maybe this was meaning don't make him a priority like in your personal life. Like maybe
No, I
don't put him
think.
over like your personal life.
I guess it could be interpreted that way, but I really do
That's what I
think
was
they're
thinking.
talking sexually. Like, don't spend too much time on him, let him spend time on
Oh,
you.
that'd be interesting too.
But
It probably says it in the article too. I should have read that
oh,
column. Yeah,
it's all good. But to me, it's like, having a good sexual encounter is when both people value how the other one's doing and feeling. And if it's very obvious that your partner doesn't, you should just get the fuck out. Like, what are you doing there? But
absolutely.
you should also go into it with the mindset of, I want to please this person. Pleasing this person turns me on. It's not about one person or the other. It's a mutual experience, and you should prioritize each other. Rant over.
Absolutely.
Continue.
Absolutely. 5 is put a timestamp on the quote situation. Um, which I don't think a timestamp is needed, to be honest. I think,
So
like,
by saying that, do they mean like this is 12 hours long, I'm leaving in the morning? Or
no. Okay,
like,
so I did glance at this category, and by timestamping the situation, they made the example of maybe try to find a man who's moving away in like 4 or 5 months.
so basically, women have no control over themselves, so you have to find someone who's leaving the area.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like
So
I once
stupid.
again I thought that one was a little weird. Number six I did think was good. It was don't overthink it, which I think is totally true
Yeah,
because
that's
women
reasonable.
tend to psychoanalyze a lot of shit,
Hmm.
and I think they need to just enjoy the ride and not think about it too much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um,
Contrary that, you know what's funny is that rule just like contradicts the last five rules.
it totally does. I mean, I feel like this whole list is just a lot of overthinking.
Don't
To be
overthink it, but keep in mind
honest,
these 10 complex rules that don't make a ton of
yeah,
sense.
yeah, ugh. Seven being set boundaries to prevent confusion of the relationship slash lack thereof. That once again goes with don't overthink it.
Yeah.
But then at this point, I think it's also setting boundaries, as in like maybe communicating with your partner,
Hmm.
kind of like defining the relationship, defining the situation, I think is maybe where that one is kind of going towards a little bit.
Hmm.
The next one is number eight, which is keep him separate or her separate from your life, which is kind of where I got my personal one on. Keep him kind of separate, especially if you meet him or her at a party and it kind of turns into casual sex. I don't want to bring that person into my personal life with my friends and my family because not only do I not want my friends to get like attached to him or her being around, but I also feel like mentally I need to have that separate category of this is just casual sex and, nothing more than that. However, if after perhaps maybe we stop having casual sex, then I'd say, yeah, like I could probably put him or her in my like casual life. Um, and then two more, nine is be honest with yourself and what you are emotionally capable of, which I feel like that's more of a maturity thing, to be honest. I feel like if you're mature, like you should be able to know whether or not you're ready. I feel like that shouldn't be a rule because, by it being a rule, that kind of means you're not ready for this kind of thing.
Right, but also, I think that rule also means, be able to take a look at your own life and your own patterns. And if your patterns are harming your life in some way, being detrimental to you, maybe you're not emotionally capable of it, even though you feel like you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have like some stuff on that too. The 10th one, before I move on, because that totally connects with some of my other points. The 10th one was have fun, which I totally agree with. And that's, stereotypical rule 10 of this was a Fashion Weekly article. So I think that's a very stereotypical, like, have fun, because it's kind of like, bitch, like, just let's do this kind of thing. So I think it's funny that it's have fun is the final unspoken rule. Going off of being honest with what you are emotionally capable of, I also did some research on the psychological effects of casual sex. My dear friend Katana, what would you think would be some of the psychological effects of casual sex? Just mentally, what do you think would be going on in someone's beautiful brain?
I mean, some girls are like you, maybe have some self-esteem issues happening, some self-worth problems. I don't think that psychological issues necessarily come from having sex, but I think people will have casual sex as a result of various psychological issues.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that you need to be able to deal with your own shit before going on to casual sex. Um, Online, I was seeing that a lot of psychology today, they say that many feel like when many feel that being sexually active without that emotional connection can lead to depression or low self-esteem. So that could very much kind of go into my category with the low self-esteem, but I personally think that I've kind of started growing out of that, so that might not be an issue.
But I wonder if that depression and low self esteem doesn't come from the lack of emotional connection, but from a misinterpretation of your own goals. As in, you want an emotional connection. You're going into something with someone knowing it's not going to result in an emotional connection. That's what you've both agreed upon, but you're depressed because it's not in line with your goals.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, because I didn't feel like that was a very fair point in saying that that lack of connection could lead to the depression or low self-esteem. I do once again feel like that's more of like a personal issue that a person can very well go into.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe also that many people could be going into a relationship of casual sex due to their depression or low self-esteem, and that's kind of why I thought that in my brain, I'd feel like it would be switched in that
Right,
case.
it's the wrong end.
So that's why I brought that one up, because I thought that was very interesting that it kind of turned the tables on what like I would personally think. The other one was being that others feel that casual sex could potentially, so on the other hand, be a good way to meet a potential long-term partner, which I thought was very cliche and cute. But I mean, they're not wrong, because honestly, like,
It does
sex,
happen. Yeah, it happens.
there can be a lot of unsaid emotions that just kind of happen in the bed. So I definitely feel like that's a high potential that could possibly happen.
I feel like that almost breaks the rules, though, in a comedic way.
It absolutely does break the
It breaks the
rules.
rules.
Absolutely. But I feel like if it is like a long-term partnership, I think
It's
that would
fine. I mean,
definitely
it's
just
totally,
happen.
there's exceptions to rules. You know, I think
Absolutely.
that's totally okay.
So with these psychological effects, do you also think that it can be mentally healthy? Or do you think it'd be mentally potent to be having this casual sex?
I think it's mentally healthy to give yourself the opportunity to explore yourself in any regard. And I think, you know, depending on the person you are, I'd say for some people it's very unhealthy, don't do it. But for some people, it really gives them an area where there's not going to be huge repercussions if they ask for certain things or want to do certain things. Gives them a chance to explore and give them an outlet. So in that regard, I think that casual sex is very healthy for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only that, but it also helps them learn about their sexuality and experience some sexuality without the option of something more to potentially happen, which I totally, tip my hat to like people like that who kind of, go into it with that attitude of kind of like expanding their horizons and learning about their sexuality.
Yeah, it gives
Um,
people a chance to walk into the bedroom and say, "Whip me, daddy," and then they look at him and go, "What the fuck?" And then they can walk back out again. Like,
yeah.
and it's
And not
done.
only that, like if I were single, like I feel like that would just make me feel so alive?
Yeah, there's definitely a huge rush with it. There's some
Yeah.
excitement, there's a little bit of peril involved.
Oh yeah.
It's very exciting, and humans crave excitement and adventure and risk. We want it, and that's a very easy way to get it.
Yeah. And on top of all that, you're being sexually active and you're single, which is like such a bonus?
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
you
feel
have
like
all
it
the
just
freedom from relationships. You don't, like, I love relationships, but God, they're exhausting.
they
You
totally
don't have to
can be.
deal
It's a
with
lot of
that.
maintenance.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you don't have to deal with all that, which, some people can't deal with it at certain times in their lives. Maybe you're getting your PhD. You don't have time for a fucking relationship when you're getting your PhD. But maybe winter break comes along and you have 20 minutes, and you just
Absolutely.
gotta get it. There's hormones, there's health benefits to getting laid that don't necessarily come from self-servicing. There's a lot that comes from having sex that you can't get anywhere else. And depending on what your life looks like, some people don't have time for committed relationships, or they can't handle a committed relationship, or there's a lot of people who just don't want a committed relationship if they're being honest with themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I also looked into There was a TED Talk done by Dr. Zana Vrongalova. God, I butchered that. Uh, but I thought it was interesting. She brought up the point that by the time we're 25, 75% of us will have experienced a hookup at least once.
That sounds pretty accurate. Hookups are very, very common in young adults nowadays. I feel like the 25% would be people like me who have always just happened to be captured in a relationship all the time. I've never had time to be single. Or people who just maybe
Don't
don't want,
believe in it, religious sects, you know.
or like people who can't get laid.
Oh god, the unfortunate few.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's
Ugh.
crazy that 3/4 of us have done it like that, and it's still so villainized and looked down upon.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's such a big issue that there shouldn't be an issue with casual sex. It's my body, it's my life, it's my pleasure. I'm not, messing with your life at all.
Yeah, if you don't want to
Let
eat a
me be, let me
Twinkie,
live this.
don't eat a
Mm,
Twinkie. But don't say no more Twinkies for anybody, because that's just some bullshit logic.
yeah.
If you don't want
And
to do something,
also,
don't do it. You have body autonomy. Good for you, but don't tell other people not to.
yeah, absolutely. And for me, I've also been lately kind of being very, it's my life and it's the one life I get. So I'm
Experience
not going to alter
everything.
my life. I'm not going to alter my life to satisfy anyone else.
Yeah. And I also, I live under the experience everything philosophy idea. I'll do pretty much anything, which drives some of our friends crazy. But yeah, like I just, if an opportunity arises, I also have a rule with dating that's a lot of the same, where I'll go on one date with anybody, which is what happened with Ryan. I went on one date with my current partner of 1.5 years. I thought he was an ugly bastard and I didn't want much to do with him. But he asked me out, and now we're like thoroughly in love, which is crazy stupid, but
It's like kind of fucked the way the universe kind of does that kind of shit to you.
yeah, yeah, don't be afraid to say, sure, universe, I'm not doing anything on Thursday night. Why not? So let's talk about the obvious downside of having casual sex, which is STDs and STIs, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So according to the last CDC report, which was done in 2016, 2 years ago, 20 million new sexually transmitted infections occur every year, accounting for almost $16 billion in healthcare costs. Many cases of chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis go undiagnosed and unreported. And data on a lot of STDs, like the human papillomavirus and herpes simplex virus, they're not really reported to the CDC, so we don't have any information on that. But a lot of STIs, like chlamydia, are curable. In fact, in California, up until you're like 25, I think, every time you go into the doctor, they have to do a urine scan for chlamydia and gonorrhea, I believe.
Hmm.
Have you done that? Have you been to the doctor recently?
I have been to the doctor and they did take a pee test for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I came in just because I had like major stomach issues. Um, oh no, I had the stomach flu, and they took my pee, and then my mom and my dad and my sister are just like they probably tested to see if you were pregnant and possibly if you had STDs and just didn't tell you. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not surprised that they did because they didn't even tell me what the pee sample was for.
Yeah, your
And they're
office
like,
might have just scanned for everything and then you didn't have anything, so they didn't tell you. But my office does take a urine sample from me every time I go in, and then they'll post on like my like health profile or whatever online the results,
mhm,
and I am clean, but
beautiful.
I know. I think it's a really good
Congratulations.
law though that they're required to test here.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it absolutely makes sense and it's for the health of everyone. It's for the health and safety of everyone. So, definitely I'd say it's a priority to get tested.
Definitely. And I was listening to something else that was talking about the highest STD rates and what states have the highest STD rates. And the highest STD rates are in Alaska, Louisiana, and North Carolina in that order, ranging from highest amount to lowest amount. Alaska has a lot of issues, but mainly the three things that are in common with those states that jump out to me is they're all red states, which there's nothing wrong with being Republican in my eyes. That's
Mm-hmm.
totally okay with me. I don't really give a fuck, but uh, the issue with those kinds of states is they don't have good sex education. They
I feel
have they have usually they have abstinence only sex education, if any sex education. They Idaho was a state like that where I lived there for a few years, and we actually did have kind of a chlamydia issue at our school because sex education was not required at the school.
that just makes me so angry and disappointed because these schools and these parents are trying to shelter their children from the inevitable, and they need to be educated. It's it's not right for them to be shielding their children of life, and they're trying to scare these children into not having sex, and then in reality this is what's happening. They're just uneducated and they don't know what to do, and I can go on forever.
Right, and statistically
Why?
speaking, abstinence only sex education programs typically only keep kids from having sex for another 6 months, and then they have sex very unsafely and to
Yeah.
varying degrees. As opposed to having comprehensive sex education programs that teach, you don't have to have penetrative sex, there's other things you can do, you can explore, this is how, this is what you should do. A lot of sex educations are also only biological and they don't focus on pleasure at all. Scaring kids kind of scares them into the arms of making stupid decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I don't know. It's one of those things that drives me insane that we don't have better sex education here because it is so, so, so important and it would drastically lower STD rates, especially since we just had the AIDS epidemic in like the 80s.
Mhm.
You'd think we'd fucking learn.
Exactly. I absolutely agree.
So, on the other end of it, how would you feel if you had to wait until marriage to have sex? Like you had to, or you'd die immediately. I don't know.
So are we talking about as of now, after I've already
No.
had sex, and now like all of a
Um,
sudden, oh, from now on I have to wait? Or are you saying from the beginning I had to wait?
I think it would be more interesting if we said from now. I think if you never knew what you were missing, you'd be fine. But let's say
Yeah,
let's say
absolutely.
now you have to wait.
I mean, where's the boundary? I mean, is it just penetration? Is it really
Anything.
like, or
Yeah,
is it
let's
like sexual
let's
contact?
go let's go the Mormon method of keep it in the box, which is the lips.
Wow. I mean, I would say it would definitely be difficult for me. But at the same time, it might not be as difficult in the meantime, considering I am long distance with my boyfriend. But hypothetically, if we were together, it would be hard. However, me, I'm a little bit more sentimental. So I would absolutely go for it. Not that I had a choice in this case, but
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be too angry about it because I feel like it would be a good reset button for when we're older and maybe more mature. I'd say my only concern is the lack of, not technique, but you kind of get what I'm
Intimacy,
saying. No, it's kind of like,
practice.
yeah, like practice, because that's always like a big fear that a lot of like kids have when they think about having sex, like only when they get married. They're kind of always afraid. Like, I think you talked to me about this once is, what if they're not good in bed, and like you need to know that kind of thing.
Which
So
they
that,
won't be. They won't be good in bed.
yeah, and
Which
that's
to
the
me
only
just
thing
leads to a disappointing wedding night. God damn it, just practice.
that, right? And that's kind of the only thing that kind of I'd be upset about is that now we'd have all these years where, there would be no practice, and I'd have to start all over and like practicing and getting the hang of, and like, positions and
Mm-hmm.
techniques and to my sex life. So I'd say that's a definite definite, downfall. But
Right.
at the same time, emotionally, I'd say that that's, I wouldn't mind. I'd feel like it'd be pretty nice getting to reunite on my wedding night.
Yeah, I can say with 100% certainty that one of two things would happen. I'd either kill my partner or I would just like fuck them and take the death. I don't think
Wow.
I'd last very long. I think I'd last 6 months.
Really?
Yeah, I'm weak. I'm so
Oh,
weak.
bruh. It's as if you have a dick.
Yeah, sometimes I think I do.
Hmm.
And then
Thank
I
you for
and then
that
I reach
assuring.
down and it's just disappointing again. No, I'm just kidding. Vaginas are beautiful and wonderful and but no, it is a joke in my friend group that like I'm potentially a man.
I definitely see the resemblance.
God. Well, I think we're done for today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, gosh, we burned through so much, and I feel like there's so much more to even talk about.
Mhm.
Um, but we hit some good hard points today, and I think this is a very good note to send out, to the public.
I do too. All right, girls. Let us know if you have any more questions on this. We can always bring this subject back. Obviously, it's something that is forever relevant. Fill in that contact us form with your questions, concerns, if you have or need relationship advice, whatever. Check out our Instagram as always. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Insert more self promos here. Bye bye, girls.
Bye, girls.